Welcome to Three's a Crowd. I'm Julie.
And I'm Terence.
So, how does anyone decide to have another kid?
We're a couple debating this decision for ourselves and inviting you to listen in.
It's not weird.
It's a little bit weird. Can you believe that this is the second last episode of the entire series?
I cannot, and I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, that's because this was the hardest episode for you and I actually to record. This one was a tough conversation that needed to happen where we were at this point in our journey, but it was a really hard conversation and a really hard episode to record.
So just to remind you, in the last episode you would have heard that we got our first big fat negative pregnancy test, and we explored some mixed feelings about that, but we also agreed that we would give it another cycle to see if we were going to yield a positive result. And in this episode we get those results and we process them.
Yes, so the processing is tough. And so just a warning that, you know, we're going to get vulnerable. This was a hard conversation, honestly, for you. I somehow, it ended up with me grilling you quite hardcore about some of your internalized thoughts and beliefs, which you weren't very happy about, but we got it on record, and that's the episode that we have for you today.
I live to serve people. I live to serve.
You're such a giver.
I know.
You're such a giver.
So here's our gift to you, the reality check. So we've had a second negative pregnancy test. So a second month of it not working, despite giving it our A+ effort. Yeah, which was hard. It was a hard thing, harder than I think maybe either of us anticipated, or maybe I'll let you speak for yourself, but
yeah.
It was hard for me because of how naive I realized I'd been around thinking that it was simply the case of making a decision and then really giving yourself a really solid opportunity for it to actually work. And if you just kind of, you know, had a basic understanding of how conception is supposed to work, you know, and you kind of time things and chart things and, you know, test for things that are working, like it should, you know, 1 + 1 should equal 2. And even I guess the first month there was a sense of, okay, you know, that was just so spur of the moment, you know, maybe we missed the window.
Yeah, we weren't playing our full game.
Yeah, but we played our full game and the outcome was a big fat single-lined negative.
And I think our experience of that was different, or at least, yeah, our response to that was different, because like you're saying, for you it was quite hard that second time, maybe to feel like you're not entirely in control of this process.
Yeah. What was your experience like?
I was also disappointed, but the disappointment I think was quite revealing for me. The fact that I was disappointed, because if, you know, I listened to our last episode and my main concern was that you were going to be disappointed and how we're going to manage the emotions that you were going to go through. That was like the last half, like literally for half an hour, we kind of spoke through, you know, my fear that you would resent me and that because the deal didn't pull through for you, that you would be massively disappointed and that would be something that would be very difficult for you to overcome. We never spoke about the idea that I might actually be disappointed too, because again, we were kind of on either sides of this deal.
Yeah.
Originally, that was our intention. And I think the fact that I was excited for the possibility, and when that drastic, amazing change didn't happen, I was really disappointed. I was surprised and also a bit relieved, because it kind of made me feel like we were even more on the same side than we were. Like we were on the same side of all of this, even though we were hoping for different outcomes, we were still on the same side. Now we're like, suddenly I realized we're both in the same space where we both wanted the same outcome. And I think again, listening to the episode, the last one we recorded, I did say something along the lines of, when I make a decision, I'm all in, no buyer's remorse. I'm like excited about the thing that we've decided. And I think that's what happened. It was like, okay, I knew I wasn't just making a decision to let the bet happen or let the deal happen. It was actually making a decision that we were going to try for a third baby. And once that was kind of settled in my head, I could get excited about it. I hadn't realized that process had actually happened until the disappointment set in. And I was like, why am I feeling disappointed? It sounds bad. Like, I've won. Yeah. I got what I wanted. I got, we did the full 5 weeks of cycle. We had 2 ovulation attempts. Neither of them worked. I carried out my full side of the bet, or the full side of the bargain. Cool, let's book that vasectomy. I could do that guilt-free. Yeah. And I did, and that's not what I felt. I felt like, damn. Yeah. I can kind of imagine this. I imagine this kid. And now that wasn't going to happen right away. So yeah, all that is to say that actually there was a definite sense of, oh, okay, I now finally understand where my head is now at. Not that I wasn't, I think it changed. I think in this month of changing my perspective, of accepting that this could be a reality, that you and I could actually have a child, because it's almost like I got, what happens when you get kidnapped and then you fall in love with your kidnapper?
Stockholm syndrome.
I feel like maybe
did you say I Stockholmed you? Terence.
Well, it was like, no, what I mean is we were in the situation where there was a possibility that my life was going to change fundamentally. Yeah. And I think I could either get on board with that and see it for all the good things that it could be, that it could bring, all the stuff we spoke about in the second episode with all the pros and cons, and all the pros, and get excited about all the pros and get excited about the change, or I could be anxious about it, and I didn't want that, and subconsciously I didn't want that. And so I think anyway, long story short, I'm now quite excited at the idea of us potentially having a third child, which is why I kind of suggested that we keep the deal rolling on a month-by-month rolling contractual basis.
Keep checking in, record another episode of the podcast. Do we, don't we?
Suddenly. So I do worry that I'm going to be flip-flopping again.
Okay.
And I think that's why I don't want to come out and say, let's go for it. Let's keep trying for a year. Yeah. Until we start thinking about other potential directions to go. Like I don't want to say I definitely want a third child. I know I'm excited about the possibility for now and for this month and then maybe next month, but I want us to be able to continue that conversation, and I feel like the setup we now have is that I have a ripcord that I can pull if I suddenly start to feel like, actually, no, I like our life the way it is.
You've got a lot of power.
Which you gave to me. So,
sucker. I think I like the fact that we're committed to continuing this process intentionally. We're not. It is when you are trying to, make a baby, it's an intentional process on all fronts. If you're actually, going for it, and I think that I like the fact that we're continuing to have the conversation, because there are elements I think I'm surprised by the new things that are being revealed. It's almost like, I think you said something in a previous episode about, you're not afraid of hard conversations or difficult conversations, but you just don't want to be having the same conversation for a year.
Yes.
And often that's about something, when we've had those sort of drawn out conversations, it's about something fairly maybe like tangible, but not too complicated. Like, do we buy a car or do we buy a house or not, Whereas I think this has so many more complexities to it. It's not just about the baby or not the baby. It's how do we feel about our fertility? How do we feel about the anxiety points around finances and a baby, whereas like, and making decisions either way. I think I had a moment after this last negative pregnancy test when I was feeling particularly anxious. It's been, really horrid weather in Cape Town, and so everything's leaking, and it's just like that sense of like
it's been a tough physical.
Yeah, it has been a tough like physical space, because I clearly am quite affected by the weather. But what I meant is that like it brings out all the things, the weak points in our home that need fixing.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me was like, okay, having a baby and not having a baby. Well, originally I was like, okay, well, we're not having a baby, so maybe now we can just fix all the windows in our house. But then I was like, actually, it's not that simple, because having a baby doesn't, or not having a baby doesn't mean that we're suddenly able to do these things.
Yeah.
It's like...
And actually, if you have a baby, like... we have drafty windows.
Yeah, we're more motivated.
We actually need to fix the windows.
I know. But I think in my mind, it's not
either or.
It's, and our lives are the way that our lives work. Our priorities, like how we're motivated by things. It's not like we're the kind of family. I think we discussed this back in episode 1. I can't remember, but we're not the kind of family who like. For whom having a third baby at this stage of our life means that like, oh no, suddenly we can't go on the 2 overseas trips a year that we always go, family of 4, hashtag, hashtag family of 4. Like that's not been, it's not, whilst having another child is monumental in many ways. And I think we'd probably feel it in like when it comes to how we work and from a social perspective, I imagine. But from a material perspective, it's not, do you know what I mean? It's not as huge of a deal as I thought it was, which I've kind of had to work through over the last month. Sort of thinking that my big relief, like as in not having the baby, was suddenly going to give us financial freedom.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense? It feels like I'm not sure I'm articulating this thought correctly.
It makes a lot of sense, because I think the big things, the house, the car, the jobs, we have a lot of those things in place already. So it's not like suddenly we need to find, we have a third room.
Yeah.
We have, there's space in our house for a baby. We have a lovely garden that the baby can grow in. We have a home that the baby can grow in. Yeah. We don't have to, we wouldn't have to think about moving.
Mm-hmm.
Our car, it's not the hugest SUV in the world, but it can fit a third child in there. And we might not be able to go on massively long holidays, or we can't take the dog with us or whatever, thank goodness. We're now in a position where, you're right, we wouldn't be missing out on luxuries. Our lifestyle wouldn't take a massive dip by number 3 arriving. But that's something you've worried about over the last month and a bit.
I think so. I think I've been feeling that sort of, I don't know what came first, but I think maybe the negative test, and then thinking I'd feel relieved because, well, we're not going to have the financial burden of a third child. And so maybe that's a good thing. But then realizing like it wasn't actually what was going to be the change of our financial situation.
Yeah.
I think maybe trying to kind of lean into staying positive for, the life that we have, which is obviously something we also, it's the other perspective, right? That we need to maintain that we are, whilst we're kind of hoping that this one thing works out, that we're also leaning into the joy
of what our current
life is.
Yeah.
And we were able to go out for dinner the other night with some friends and leave our kids with my brother and his wife, and it was like a low stress kind of thing. And I did have a moment there when I was like, there are some things that would pause. You being able to travel for work, or me being able to travel for work, whilst it's obviously, the partner feels it, who's the partner's at home, it is different. A 7 and 9-year-old can understand it rationally, and you can talk to them on the phone. And a baby, it would be hard. It would be hard to leave a baby, for either of us, actually.
So I think the reality is there are opportunity costs that a baby takes away from, or that we can't spend because of the baby, right? So, but I think the problem is that, I think maybe more so for you than for me, I think because you've always had a secret hope for baby number 3, I think there's been a part of you that's been reserving a part of your energy and, you know, like your time and your other physical resources, just in case
this happens.
So you haven't thrown yourself in, like, now that our boys are more free, not that you don't work hard, you work flipping hard, but like I think you're less likely to look for like a side hustle or for like a studying thing or something else in your life.
Hobby.
A hobby even. But you know what I'm saying? Whereas if we went, hey, there's not going to be a number 3. These two wonderful boys are it. And the time and energy we would have spent on number 3, there are a million different things we can do with that time. If we knew that if you knew that for a fact, there would be other things that you and I could do with that time and that energy that could bring in more money, and then we could be going away on a family holiday. Our lives could change substantially if we chose to not have child number 3 and redirect those efforts into other things, which is what a lot of people do. People who choose not to have kids at all. Well, hey, I can work until 9 p.m. I can travel the world. I can work anywhere in the world I want to. I can study that extra bit. I can do a second job. I can do a side hustle. I can do all these other things. I can learn new skills because I don't have baby screaming in the background, or I don't feel like every moment I'm choosing to do something that brings me joy. I don't feel that guilt that all parents feel because I'm actually should be spending time with my kids.
Yeah.
Where you have to justify everything you do. It's like, okay, if I study this, I can earn more money and that'll be good for it's always as a justification for parenting. People without kids don't necessarily have that. And so they have opportunities that we don't have.
Yeah. And I think for me, maybe, and that's a really interesting point, and I hadn't really thought about it like that, but I mean, I have, but hearing it about the kind of putting myself on pause, I think there's definitely some merit to that. And I think also that's why there feels like a sense of urgency from our side, or from my side, not just because of my age, my advanced maternal age.
Geriatric.
I know. But because we're in that life stage where we still have a youngest child who still requires, our boys still require us to kind of sit by them to go to sleep properly. We're still in the hands-on parenting. We're definitely at the end of that, and not as if we're not going to be hands-on parents, but that intense phase of parenting.
Yeah,
we're seeing the tail end of it for sure.
Yeah, we definitely have more resources available to us.
Absolutely,
at the age they are now.
Absolutely, but there is still, I could see myself being drawn back in to another baby without feeling like, oh, I was able to up and go without any effort. Like, as in when I leave our kids for work, when I leave the boys and you to go for work, obviously I miss you all, but I still, there's a, no matter how, competent and amazing you are, I'm still thinking about, they're not independent teenagers. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
They still need, like, mom still organizes the school routine and what's in their lunchbox, and they still miss me, and mommy, don't go, or please come back soon.
I see you saying. So you're still in the phase of being sometimes physically needed.
Yes. So
a third child, especially for this first 8-9 years, it wouldn't be anything new for us.
Yeah, exactly.
We wouldn't have to be like, oh, getting back into a phase, because we're in that phase.
Exactly. Still. It wasn't like, I was reading a post on a Facebook group, I think yesterday or over the weekend, of a woman who's just found out she's pregnant again. I think she's like 40, and her youngest child is 13, and she is in the, she's got teenagers, and going back, she feels like the whiplash of the sense of, oh my gosh, I'm now going all the way back to, being needed. Whereas, her children are at that stage where, they're potentially even a little bit embarrassed of mom. Like, we're not anywhere near there yet.
No, they want all of our, if any time we can give them, they will gladly
take. So I think that's maybe part of the reason why, it's not so much a random age thing with our boys as much as the stage of life where I feel like I could just throw a baby into the mix and still be flexing all my mom muscles in this particular way of parenting.
Right. Without and that wouldn't have atrophied because you haven't used them in 4 years.
Exactly.
Or...
I mean, I'm obviously saying this hypothetically. Maybe it doesn't ever atrophy, it just shifts. But like, yeah, I feel like there is obviously a stage and a season. And then the other thing about being on pause, I mean, I can do the imagine the different pathways game, imagine if we didn't and I did go back to studying and, have a sort of 5-year plan to do X and Y and advance my career in this particular way, or, plan a big trip for us. And those are exciting things, and they might be things that really just have to be explored in earnest soon. But I think I have come to realize, I think I was saying this to you or, the other night, that that's not the primary thing that makes me the most excited. And I think I've had that clarification just over the last few weeks, that actually, so I think I've been holding on to a hope of being able to parent another child.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry that you say that, because while you were talking, I was thinking about the fact that, as we're saying, there's all these things we could do with the same energy and time that it would take to raise a third child. You've never spoken so vividly about a potential future, as you have when it comes to talking about raising child number 3. Whenever you speak about what different career path you might want to take, whenever you speak about what different studies you might want to do or hobbies you want to take up, or we've had lots of conversations about all the other parts of life that I feel like you should be doing, and you're like, yeah, I can see the value in that, but I'm not quite sure what I want to do. I'm not quite sure if this is there's nothing that's grabbed you and really has excited you, even as something in your imagination, even as like a potential. When you say, I would love to have a third child, you can imagine how the child is sitting between the 2 boys. You can imagine how they play, like all 3 kids are playing with each other. You have a name for her. She's a her. Like, what I'm saying? You have this vivid imagination of exactly what that future looks like. And that's the only time I've heard you speak about a future with that kind of clarity.
Yeah.
Which says a lot about... Sure, we could do all these other things. We could be the family that plans to travel the world.
Maybe we will, right? That's also the thing, is that it's not to say that if we have a third child, all these other dreams become impossible.
No, totally. But my point is, yes, all those things could be possible, but this is the thing that you want to be possible. This is the thing that you actually want. This is what I always ask you. Well, what do you want to do? What do you want to study? What do you like? How do you want to change your career? What would you like your future to be? And it's always been nebulous in your mind. This is the one thing that's like, it's been super concrete. You're like very, very clear on it. And that is really interesting, because again, I think maybe that's why partly why we've gone, okay, let's just do this, because this is something that we have clarity on.
And I think it's taken a long time to get to that clarity, for a number of reasons. First of all, I think I really struggle to allow myself, and this sounds like I'm trying to do like a humble brag, but I'm just like, as I'm about to finish a sentence, I'm like, ugh. But hear it from whence it comes. Like, allow myself to express a passion or a joy that might not seem logical or appropriate. I don't know if appropriate's the right word, but definitely in the spaces and circles, there is the wisest, the kind of, something that might even be a little bit selfish, because it is something that I want, or we want, but I want for us. I think I pride myself in an identity that finds joy out of doing things for other people and doing the right things that will make, that will contribute to good outcomes for others. That's part of my role in a lot of spaces and communities that we're in, and I love that role. And this isn't that. Yeah, you'll have less capacity to do the good work and for other people that you currently are able to do. And I think
for time.
True. And I think that comes to the bigger thing, which is, motherhood is a critical identity to me. It's an important identity, but it's one of many. And as a feminist, as someone who cares deeply about women being able to express all the parts of themselves, this feels like I'm leaning very heavily into this sort of biological need as a woman to like mother a child. And it kind of feels, like there's so many other things you could be doing with your brain and your time. And do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to be like, aren't you just you're finding too much joy in this motherhood role? It sounds like, as I'm saying it out loud and watching your face, this is why we should not sit opposite each other, because I'm being very distracted by what your face is saying.
My face does not talk. Okay.
Oh, really? Your face shouts.
So are you feeling like is there a bit of tension between your identity as a woman and a feminist and this need that you have to have a third baby?
Maybe. And it's probably really self-imposed, because I bet many of my friends who are wonderful, thoughtful women would be like, you're allowed to want, like we tell women like they're allowed to want nice things, and if for you nice things is having a baby, like it's okay.
Isn't it the ability to have a choice?
Exactly, totally. I think for me to lean into having a third child, it would be me. I don't know. It's an identity of me that I don't even know if I can finish these thoughts. They're just
interesting.
too...
It's interesting because I mean you've been thinking about this for years.
I have.
So what is the central tension? Because I still think I'm struggling. I don't get it.
I need to remind myself this can all be edited out. It feels very vulnerable as I'm sitting here to be talking with a microphone about this.
The reason why I'm pushing is, if we do release this for other people to listen to, my sneaking suspicion is that you are not alone in that complex tension that you're struggling with right now. I think you're amazing and wonderful. I don't think you're unique necessarily in that way. Like there's a whole bunch of issues that dads deal with, but like you spend a lot of time with moms, with women, talking through these issues. I don't think you're the only one who has to deal with this kind of thing. I'm sure there are loads of incredibly intelligent and powerful and capable women who also want to be moms and who like, how does that work? How do I go for it all? Do I just do the career? Do I just do the mom thing? What will people think about me if I just do the mom thing? Or I just like, the whole you're damned if you do, damned if you don't thing, and you're damned if you do it all. So I think there would be people potentially listening to it going, Terence doesn't get it, but I certainly get it because I feel the same tension.
Maybe I just, we've all still got to have personas that are like upheld in the world. And this is a hard one to be that vulnerable about. See, in one sense, I've got a lot of so when it comes to motherhood and mothering children, I have a lot of unofficial expertise in the space. I am specifically comfortable around babies and the new stage. I get calls from other people to help other people in their babies.
Minus 3 months to 2 years it's your jam.
Yeah, I'm just like, I have logged enough hours in unofficial training, on the job next to mums, helping to have maybe made that into something, but I didn't. I feel, but in some sense, mothering children is a safe space for me, and I also enjoy it. I really love it, and it is maybe about maybe there's part of it that elongates the stage, that I just really, really enjoy and wanted to have another child.
Like your sweet spots for a longer period to be in that sweet spot.
Yeah, I enjoy it's not that I can imagine I can see the appeal in the empty nester kind of thing. I can imagine, because we are such a great team, I can imagine you and I having a great time when the kids are out the house. So it's not that I'm like, oh, I want to just be in the trenches of early motherhood forever. It's not that, but I'm not ready to give up on it yet either. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
And I find, but I know that the tension is that the ambitious kind of career-oriented, pick up 3 side hustles, be a mother of influence, do all those kinds of things is like the more appreciated by the world kind of path. I think that's what I was trying to get to earlier. So I feel like I'm in a bit of a fork, and I'm actually going to be in some. I thought I could choose. I thought we could choose by doing this gamble and saying yes. I thought we could choose, but it's turning out that the choice might not be left to us, right? It might be left to like some croaky old eggs and some slow swimmers and you know, like I don't know, like an inhospitable, what do they say, hotel uterati. You know, it could be that.
Yeah. Which was again, weirdly though, that's what we wanted. We wanted the choice taken away from us.
Totally. At least, yeah, I think I thought I wanted the choice taken away, but now that it's been taken away, I have to face the fact that I can't elongate potentially this stage of early motherhood. I now, earlier than I thought I would have to, what is the alternative? I have to pick the other path and lean into it and figure out what my next 20 years is going to be and work towards that. And I love the idea of being ambitious, and I am ambitious in a lot of ways. I am ambitious. I do not have a stress-free job. I do not have a job that doesn't put me in, you know, the spotlight of different spaces. But I have to pick that path exclusively earlier than I was thinking I was going to.
And not really be forced down that path is kind of the reality. Whereas with me saying, I wanted that path, and now this other options become available, and I've been able to choose that and then get excited for it. You know, so if we did have a third child, I would have chosen to be excited for it, or at least I would have been pushed down that path with excitement being the primary emotion. If it doesn't happen, you'd be pushed down that path of non-third child ambition, for lack of a better way of calling it. But that would be the primary emotion would be like grief, really.
Yeah, I think grief will give it the first shove. I'm sure I will pivot and find things, and I'm not one to not.
No, totally. But I think my point is that it's born out of two different emotions.
Yeah.
My adjustment to this new potential future is I'm able to meet that with excitement.
Yeah.
Yours will start off with you having to kind of overcome the sense of loss and grief before you can pivot into actually appreciating all of the things that come with that, which is hard, which is a hard space to be in. And you know, we've spoken for quite a bit now, and I think we might in the next episode really have to unpack the idea of what it would potentially mean to not have that option. You know, I was thinking today, this is the first decision you and I have ever made while thinking that we may be too old for it. Every other decision we've made in our lives is like, are we too young for this? Is it too early in our lives? This is the first time we've gone, ooh, are we on the edge of too old? Do you realize that? We got married. It was like, ooh,
we're so young.
We're so young. You know, we got into we bought our first flats. Like, ooh, this is like, you know, so early in our careers to like be buying something. And for most of our friends, you know, having your first child in your late 20s was early for a lot of our friends, even especially for my friends who in their mid 30s still don't have kids. You know, but even buying this house that we're currently in, it was all like, ooh, is it too early? Is it too soon? This is the first decision where we have to contemplate the idea that we may actually be too old for it. And that is a weird shift to be in. And maybe that's something we need to talk about in the next episode, about how do we deal with that? How do we process that?
I think I want to turn the mic on to you for the next episode think I'm going to be asking you all the hard questions. How are you feeling about these big life choices, Terence?
You see, I'm easy. I'm
because
easy.
I
I'm
just
easy.
feel like
I'm easy like a summer.
Way too much under the microscope with this one.
That's just the way the cookie crumbles for these episodes. I think the reality is, with the space that we're in now, where we are actively trying to have let's just end this episode by like making it clear. We are actively trying to have a third baby. Deal be damned. Even though we will keep the month by month contract rolling. I do think there are fundamental issues that a woman faces in this particular space that we're in that I don't face. I think that's just the reality. I think no one's going to be asking me the question of, oh, is that third child going to inhibit your ability to be ambitious in your career?
Yeah.
I mean, that question, it will, because that's the kind of dad I am, where I'm going to have to choose to be a good dad to that third child, as opposed to saying yes to every possible influencer job I can take, or traveling, or all that kind of stuff, right? Or at the very least, I won't feel the pressure that you're feeling. I'm not going to have to contemplate how, like, my body might not be able to do this thing that it's always been able to do. And now suddenly, because I've reached, what is it called? Advanced maternal age, it might not be able to do it as well anymore. I don't have to contemplate these things. So I think it makes sense that most of these episodes are kind of centered around you and how you're coping with it, because that is the big questions. Those are the big questions. At least for me. I worry about you. I want to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, and I am okay. I think, we're doing a lot of processing on the go.
So much processing. All the talking.
Pop psychology, chair therapy, whatever. Like it is a process. I mean, regardless of what the outcome is, people cannot accuse us of being thoughtless.
Oh,
we have proof.
No. Cheapest creepers. At the very least.
What were you thinking? We were thinking.
Here's
overthinking.
5 hours of conversation for you to listen to. And you will listen to every last minute of it.
I love you.
I love you too. We'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for listening in.
As always, this is our story, so everything applies to us, but might not apply to you. And in fact, we would love to hear about the things that do apply to you and about your story. So tell us about how you came to the decision to have your next child, or whether or not you're grappling with this issue yourself. Send us your thoughts to aphrodaddyct@gmail.com.
Or get hold of us on Instagram, or the gram, like the cool people call it.